It's time! Streaming live from Cleveland, Ohio, presenting the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight podcast of the world, the Big Play Reflux Show!
Okay, do you need medical attention?
Yeah.
What is wrong?
I don't know. I know damn nothing.
Attacked by Chuck. He's to the 10. He's the running to the 5. He dips out left. He's doing it. Touchdown.
It's time! The Big Play Reflux Show!
Welcome to the Big Play Reflog Show. I'm your host, Nick Padone. We got the whole crew in studio. Big Play Dave producing today, but we have Gabriella Cruz in studio, Chris McNeil as well. What is going on, guys? Another Brown season in the books.
Happy Monday.
Off-season edition, first episode right now, Nick. The fun really begins now in Cleveland.
Yeah,
right?
I guess another season of Big Play Reflog begins as it is officially the NFL offseason where we thrive. I mean, we'll have free agency, we'll have the draft, and a whole bunch more. Thank God. Pitchers and catchers report in just 35 days. Baseballs are on the corner. The Cavs are in full swing. So we always have a lot to talk about. But tonight on the show, we're going to get things cracking with a Labatt, and we are going to jump into Power Rank Monday. We haven't done that in a long time. We're going to talk about this Brown season. We're going to keep that talk alive when we get into Cleveland headlines because there's a lot of news presented by Shaq News as Joe Woods has been relieved as his duties as Browns defensive coordinator. Peers, Kevin Stefanski, and others are safe, but we'll talk defensive coordinator. After that, we're going to finish things up with some big play bets presented by Tipico Sportsbook, the exclusive sportsbook of the Big Play Network. So what do you guys say? I think we'll get things going with Power Rank Monday.
All right, I just want to throw this out there. I don't have a Power Rank Monday. I haven't produced in a while. I don't have the graphic. Give me a week. We'll be good.
All right. Well, let's just kick things off. There you go.
Power Rank Monday.
It's almost like you voiced that. All right. This Power Rank Monday is brought to you by Labatt. We've needed a few Labatts to get through this Brown season, and it is officially over. What a disappointing season that it was, but we're going to try to look at some positives today. So we're going to power rank the best moments of this Brown season. And when I got to think about this, I think probably a lot of the best moments came early on in the season, right?
Completely agree with you. That's what I was looking at, too, when I was putting together my list.
Well, let's hear, Chris. What are some of your top moments this season?
Okay, my number three.
Number three.
This one was from this past month, so it was a little bit later on in the season. But when I think about individual plays, there weren't a whole lot, to be honest with you, that stuck out in my mind. But the game against the Texans, the punt return touchdown that we had for Donovan Peoples-Jones, that one does stick out because that doesn't happen too often in today's NFL. Haven't seen a whole lot of returns, and especially returns for touchdowns. So to see that one be taken back to the house against the Texans, get us on the board, get us kind of started in that game, that one sticks out in my mind. That's my number three.
All right, let's hear your number two.
My number two, this was early in the season, as you were touching on before. A lot of our good memories did come from very early on, and this is very, very early on. September 11th, beating Baker Mayfield, the lead up to the game. Obviously, with Baker putting out T-shirts about this game, still half the fan base thinking we should have kept Baker, half the fan base upset about, the way it went down, and then the other half, I suppose at that time bought in on Deshaun Watson, but it certainly did divide that fan base. And going in there, beating Baker, Cade York, having that huge 58-yard field goal at the end of that, getting AFC Special Teams Player of the Week for his effort. I mean, that game kind of had it all, and we had a lot of hope at that time, boys, as we thought, boy, if we can just hold on right now and get through these Brissett games and get to Deshaun Watson, we may have playoffs in our future. But we all know how that turned out. But that was my number 2.
All right, well, if that's your number 2, I'm excited to hear what your number 1 is, because I feel like a lot
No
of us
kidding.
probably have that as our number 1, because that game is kind of all downhill after that Carolina Panther game.
So my number 1
Number 1.
came from yesterday's game.
Okay.
Oh.
At about 4 p.m. when that thing was over, because I was done. I was exhausted. I was done with this season. I was really happy to finally be moving into the offseason. We see immediately what happens. We have a firing of our defensive coordinator, Joe Woods. And I think it was kind of a necessary evil this season, really. When you look at the way things came down with Deshaun Watson, with the suspension, we were set up to not make the playoffs this year, no matter which way you slice it. I think a lot of us deluded ourselves into thinking there was a path, and people were talking about paths even up to this week with the way that Bills-Bengals game got I just lost my train of thought.
Cancel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't
right.
play it.
That's
Yeah.
the word. I'm like, boy, I'm just losing my mind. This new time slot.
Do you like how we were just going
and
to
the
let
fact
you
that they
go
were
there,
talking about
too?
expanding playoffs. So there was even a path as late as this week, but it's just nice to have this thing over, have this off our plate, and now be looking forward to next season.
Yeah, you guys ready for my best moment of the season? I'll just cut to the chase. My number 1 top moment from this Brown season came today. It was when the Browns fired Joe Woods. That was the best part
I
of the
wondered
Brown
if one of
season
you
for
guys
me.
was going to put that.
Because it was such a necessary thing. I mean, we really thought that it could have happened last year, and it seemed like he saved himself at the end. But, I mean, this was year 3. There were still miscommunications. There were still too many men on the field at times. Like, the most just simple, fundamental pee-wee football type of things the Cleveland Browns defense couldn't do. So that's my number 1.
Nick, were
And
you
it's
getting
crazy that-
getting worried that the defense was playing a little too good in that first half?
No,
That we were going to keep
no.
Joe Woods around? No?
I kind of knew. I was like, this Pittsburgh, that Pittsburgh game, it was weird. I don't even think they were trying to win that game. I think
didn't
they
look
were
like
just
it.
trying new stuff out. Yeah, because they were so unserious yesterday. And I really think what's crazy is Joe Woods was probably fired like 8 weeks ago. I like about when the fans and the media fired him is about when he's probably been fired, but they didn't have anybody else on that defensive staff that was capable of calling plays. So I feel like that's kind of why he made it as long as he did.
Well, and if you listen to his press conferences in the lead up to yesterday's game, he had already resigned himself to the fact he was going to be gone.
Yeah.
I mean, every single presser, I felt bad for the guy. From what I understand, he's a good guy and everything. You hate to see people lose their jobs, but he kind of knew that this was coming. The writing was on the wall here for a while. And boy, that was kind of painful to listen to for each of those pressers.
For sure. We're going to talk more Joe Woods in Cleveland headlines. Gab, do you have any moments that stand out to you from this Brown season that really is a kind of a Brown season to forget?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool when Miles broke the franchise career sack record earlier in the season. That was nice. And then another thing that stuck with me was Chiefs one-handed touchdown catch.
Yeah.
And
that was a good one.
beating Tom Brady at home also was pretty cool.
Yeah, Jacoby outplaying Tom Brady, by the way.
That
is a
whole
highlight.
thing was really good for us. And probably those are my top 2. It was cool to beat the Bengals on Halloween at home also but then we lost that streak later on. But
Gab, I will echo that one. That was the one that Bernie and Jack went to. My 11-year-old son
okay.
walked through the tunnel, beat Tom
Yep,
Brady.
that's right.
By far and away, my number 1 as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and then you got to sit with the McNeils.
Oh,
which
yes.
obviously
And, yes, I forgot that.
And
Don't
wasn't-
carry the lead on that one there, Dave.
Wasn't McGrandma in attendance for that?
It was her birthday.
Yes.
Yeah, it
Shout
was
out
her
McGrandma.
birthday. They put her up on the scoreboard. I mean, it was a big time. So for the Browns to come through, they knew it was McGrandma's birthday.
That's
right.
That they beat Tom Brady just
day.
to celebrate.
Big day that was. And a big day today is we're going to keep going with this Joe Woods news. So let's get right into it with our Cleveland headlines.
Cleveland headlines.
Cleveland headlines are brought to you by ShackNews.com. Shack News, your go-to site for video games and more. Be sure to check out their featured article, Shack News' most anticipated games of 2023, where the crew previews what's coming to the gaming world this new year. And remember, you can join in on all the discussions using the Shack News Cortex and subscribing to their Twitch channel. So if you're a gamer, Shack News is the site for you. Check them out on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at the handle @CheckNews and at CheckNews.com.
Nailed it.
Good job. Well, the Browns, guys, as we all know, lost another frustrating game yesterday to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was pretty much a microcosm of what Chris said, where it was late in the year, you're putting away your Christmas tree, and over in the other room, the Browns just getting rolled over by the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. And it gives us yet another last place finish in the division. I want to go to Dave first. Dave, what stood out to you most about yesterday's game? Because I feel like I kind of said it for me, was that I don't think the Browns were ever seriously trying to win that game. I think they were probably trying to make sure Deshaun looked okay, maybe figure out what pieces of the defense were salvageable for next year. But other than that, it seemed like a pretty unserious football game from pretty much start to finish, where Mike Tomlin and his team had a lot to play for because there still was a path for them to make the playoffs, and the Browns just never really showed up.
And wouldn't you think that, the Browns, at least as a Cleveland fan, like wanting to, one, give Mike Tomlin his worst record of all time with the Steelers, two, knock him out of the playoffs. Thank you, Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
But yeah, for that game, I would say all I really cared about was Deshaun, because you're right. We knew the defense was going to lose their intensity. They weren't playing for Joe Woods.
Nope.
There's no leadership on this entire team.
Nope.
So I just wanted to see what Deshaun would look like. He got sacked 7 times. He holds the ball for a long time. He looks like me and Madden, like rolling out, trying to make a play. I think he'll get there, but do we have the right system in place for him to succeed? For Nick Chubb, 12 rushing attempts? Something like that.
And he had 77 yards.
Yeah,
so Tipico had the
horrible.
Tipico had the boost up at 80. And I'm like, 80 and a Browns win was the Tipico big play boost yesterday. Of course, with the Bernie bet, which, he discussed today already on the Big Play Network. But yeah, just an inconsistent performance from Deshaun. 2 touchdowns, but the 2 interceptions were really bad. Sacked 7 times.
He didn't look great.
That offensive line has regressed pretty bad. Chris, what'd you think about yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, similar things. Watson has that one interception where it's like, what's he even looking at there? But you also saw the athleticism, on that touchdown to Chubb, where he's able to move around. He's able to make plays with his feet, and that's what we're looking for. So you see those glimpses with him. You don't see the consistency yet. That's something we got to work on in the offseason, and hopefully, excuse me, he comes out strong next season, and he can build upon, those glimmers that we see, because he's just such a tremendous athlete. And to see what he can do on that football field and really change the offense when he's out there, hopefully they can get this thing more set to his game in the offseason so that we really don't have these inconsistencies.
Absolutely. And I think it's just also so frustrating when we look at this loss is I'm sitting there watching Sunday Night Football last night, and the Detroit Lions had to run out in Lambeau Field and play a game where they had just found out about a half hour before that they were eliminated from the playoffs, and they went in there and they played spoiler, and they knocked Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs, and they played inspired football. They played hard. It was such a fun game to watch from a team that, again, just 30 minutes prior found out that they were eliminated from the playoffs. And it was like the Lions yesterday played harder than what I saw out of the Browns all season long. And I think that's the most frustrating part. And I like Dan Campbell. I think he's a good guy and a good coach for sure. But it's so hard not to look in your own backyard and be like, why can't we have this for once?
How big of a role do you think that, I just have this inkling that from a culture standpoint, we've brushed on it before, but like the Clowney thing that came out, you got to wonder how much of that was just the final poke, in the balloon, whatever. I mean, because there might have been some tingling things. Do other people feel that way that he feels? Why did he feel so confident in saying that? Why at this point in the season? I feel like that was just kind of the thing that really was a dud for the morale also at the time. And like you guys all pointed out, it certainly showed on the field. And then going back to Deshaun, I think that sometimes, like Chris, you were talking about his athleticism and his ability to just use his feet and whatever. I think that's cool. But then also sometimes I think he kind of looks like he's defaulting to that as a way to just make stuff up on the fly, and it looks a little disorganized sometimes. So I'm not discrediting his athleticism, but I'm like, I hope that doesn't become a huge crutch, because we've seen the drawbacks to that also.
So you touched on the locker room a little bit, and obviously today we got rid of one of the problems, we think, with Joe Woods, but that begs the question, does it go higher? Is Stefanski's job safe? What do you think on that one, Nick? Have you heard anything? Do you think it's going to be safe for him?
I mean, as far as this offseason, are you asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to come out next year very much so on the hot seat. I'm assuming right now he's going to be safe, right? Because he's the one who actually put out the statement about Joe Woods, so he should be okay now. But, I mean, going forward, is he going to make it through next season?
Yeah, take that a step farther. How many games does Kevin Stefanski have to figure this thing out?
No, I mean, it's a short leash, right? Because them not firing him this year puts him on the hot seat next year. And also, and maybe this is a crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy out of me, but listen to this, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Again, I said earlier, I think Joe Woods has probably realistically been fired about 8 weeks ago. I mean, the fans were done with them. The media was done with them. The players were done with them. And it seemed like the other coaches were done with them too. I wonder if they held on to Joe Woods for these last couple of weeks and made him out to be the scapegoat. Because had they fired him 8 weeks ago and things didn't turn around and players were still complaining about leadership, about guys leaving the facility early 8 weeks ago, guess what everybody's attention would be at? Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Barry, Paul DePodesta. So I think they held on to Joe Woods till the last possible moment. And today they were able to say, see?
To be the sacrificial lamb?
We got rid of Joe Woods. But I don't know that he was completely acting on his own. And I think there's still a lot of pieces of that defensive staff that don't need to be retained. And there's a lot of pieces on that defensive side of the football on the roster that just need turned over. I could probably think, if we had all night, we could probably pull up the roster and cross 30 guys off of it, that it wouldn't be a big deal if they didn't come back next year.
Chris, where are you with Kevin?
That's brutal. That's brutal, that assessment of our roster. Oh, man. Yeah, he's going to come out on a very hot seat next year. And I'm not sold, obviously. The play calling, the in-game decision-making have all been questionable this year. I think he's regressed. I really do. And I know that having the players perform and execute helps that. And it doesn't put him into situations, but we keep talking about it. This is the type of team that needs to win at the margins. And at the margins, it means making fewer mistakes and also out-coaching the other team. And he has not been able to do that this year, bottom line.
Gab, what do you think? Chris, and do you know who Stefanski reminds me of? Not, they're on different sides of the ball.
I have somebody too.
Romeo Crennel.
Romeo? Really?
Yeah, obviously a completely different coach. But you would look over on the sidelines after a big play or something that went wrong, and you knew exactly what his face was going to look like. Stoic. Nothing. The exact same no matter what was happening. I don't know. There's no leadership with the team. I think that you have to look and say, we need someone to light a fire under these guys.
Yeah, but you look at the Patriots, you look at Bill Belichick.
That's a fair point.
We always bring him. He's the only counter example. Like, that's the only one we have to go to.
He's the ultimate counter example to everything, pretty much.
Right.
Well, how about this one for a comparison, guys? That's pretty recent. And I think when I think of Kevin Stefanski and the way that his tenure as a head coach in the NFL has gone, I look right at what happened in Chicago with Matt Nagy. Won Coach of the Year in 2018, and he was a young, smart, offensive guy, a disciple of Andy Reid and what was going on down there in Kansas City. Everybody loved Matt Nagy, and look where the Bears are at right now. They have the #1 overall pick, and Matt Nagy was fired just 3 years into that tenure and removed from that Coach of the Year award. So I do think there's a ton of pressure on Kevin Stefanski next year if the Browns aren't in the playoffs, and if mid-season, they're not close to the playoffs, there's going to be another conversation to be had in Berea, and it probably has us looking at the 2024 Cleveland Browns. And that's just the situation that we continue to put ourselves in when they continually take stabs at these coordinators that are unproven and try to find the next Belichick, the next McVay. Those guys don't grow on trees.
Okay, continuing on, though. Now we've eliminated the defensive coordinator, gone.
Yep.
You get rid of Stefanski potentially. How long until Andrew Barry's on that hot seat?
I mean,
how about Paul DePodesta? I mean, where are we at with those guys then? Are they going to go as a package with Stefanski and we're going to totally clean house?
That's a good point, Chris. How do we get DePodesta on the hot seat? Like, I feel like we need to figure out a way to get that dude on the hot seat. He's just the guy in the office who's always gonna kind of fly by.
He's not in the office. He's in his own office out in San Francisco,
Right?
3 hours behind. And what's crazy about the Andrew Barry question is Stefanski hired Andrew Barry. So then do you have that awkward thing where Barry is awkwardly tied to the next head coach, or where do you go from here? They really need this thing to work out with Deshaun Watson, Kevin Stefanski, and Andrew Barry as is. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be much more changes than just Joe Woods this offseason. You can't come summertime when training camp is here and we're all excited. I'm telling you guys, and I know we all will be excited, I'm not getting hooked, though, because bigger things do need to change than just, Joe Woods is fired, everything will be fine. Because we did it last year. We got rid of Baker. We got Deshaun. Everything will be fine. The bad man is gone, and it wasn't.
I'm not going to get hooked, though. I'm going to take that quote.
So that happened last year. So let's rewind 1 year. Chris, you know this from years of doing this together. I was always super optimistic going into every season. The worst we would do is 11 wins. Now I just go into it 9-8, 8-9 is the ceiling, and you just can't get quite as hurt.
Well, that's a good strategy. To any young listeners out there, take Dave's advice right there. Go in with low expectations on the Cleveland Browns year in, year out, and you're sure not to be as disappointed as we have been for years and years.
I'm sure if they hire Brian Flores next week, we'll all be in here yelling that we're going to the Super Bowl. So
Absolutely.
We'll see you guys next week. So obviously this season was disappointing, but I think what could be a good place to wrap up this conversation. We've talked a lot about the disappointments, but how are you going to remember the 2022-23 Cleveland Browns? And what was your bright spot? Because how I think I'll remember them is a team that did underachieve, but a team that also was really given no true chance. When that suspension was increased from 6 games to 11, we kind of knew that it was left for dead. It looked like maybe Jacoby had given the season enough life that if Deshaun came back and did some things, it could be magic. But then he was rusty, which, Chris, I know you warned us he was going to be, and he was, and that was one of the better takes of the 2022 football season. But yeah, I mean, I think this was a season where the Browns really never had a chance once that suspension was increased.
Yeah, I think, I'm always going to remember there's always something that sticks out that I take from season to season.
Yeah.
It's always one of those things you don't immediately think about. But for this one, it's going to be that Jets game. Yeah. Next time we play the Jets, I'm going to be thinking about the Jets because the Jets game just so killed us. And I know it wouldn't have mattered at the end if you lose to the Steelers and everything, but it would have changed the outlook on everything for this season and coming up to the end of the season. So, and that's a lesson to this team that never, ever think that you have sit on your laurels and think that you've won a ball game or that you've done enough. There's never enough to be done. You've got, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you got to make sure that you finish ball games. And that's something we need to take into this next season, every season afterwards. Do not quit. Do not think you've won the ball game. Make sure you finish these ball games.
Finish through the line. Actually, that game is a really good example of why we all have such PTSD year after year. Did I tell you guys how my dad thought we won that game because there was only 2 minutes left, and then he went to go mow the lawn, and I talked to him hours later. And I was like, did you see the game? And he was acting like we won. I was like, oh, buddy, just wait till I tell you.
Go on YouTube real quick.
That was really painful. But bright spots, Nick, I would have to break it up BB before Jacoby or before Brissett and after Brissett. So the bright spot, I think all of them were BB before Or actually, no, not before Brissett, before Deshaun. BD. My brain is all over the place.
We got a lot of those. There we go.
We had a long show before this. But yeah, so breaking it up, when we had the Jacoby era versus the Deshaun era, we kind of pointed it out with our power rankings that most of our bright spots were in that Jacoby era. So I'm taking away from this season the fact that he brought us a lot of positive leadership. And he had a cool post or a press conference the other day, and someone asked him, what are you going to take away from the season, or what did you want to accomplish? And he just said, I wanted to be a good teammate. And I think somebody else chimed in from across the room and was like, you are a good teammate, bro. So he had that aura and he brought that leadership. So I'm going to take that as a big positive for the team. What he gifted was this real leadership quality.
Yeah, for sure. I think Jacoby is kind of one of the, I think Cleveland history will remember Jacoby Brissett very quietly. I think he's created lifelong fans here in Cleveland. And I think, we would all love to have him back as Deshaun's backup next year. But I mean, if that doesn't work out, I'm pulling for the guy to go get a check and to go start somewhere. I really think he could do it.
He can always do QB sneaks for us.
Absolutely. My bright spot's going to go to DPJ. I think DPJ showed this year that he has the potential with Deshaun Watson to become a 1,000-yard receiver. I think that he gets a contract extension this summer, and we have a pretty nice 2-3 punch in Amari Cooper and DPJ, and I think they add a different wide receiver veteran this offseason. Hint, hint.
I like that.
Read between the lines there. All right. Is that enough, Browns? Should we take a pause on the Browns?
That was about 26 minutes, 37 seconds too much Browns.
We're good on them.
All right. That's impressive. We did 20. I feel like we didn't get too low there. We didn't.
No, we're good. And yeah, you know what? A little shout out to Cade York, because I thought that kid's career was going to end at some point this season, and he pulled it around and actually looked pretty good towards the end of the season. So I think we still have our kicker.
Yeah, honestly, you talk about Cade York's season, it's kind of like a reverse roller coaster. Because if you think of a roller coaster, it's like Top Thrill Dragster, where it starts flat and then it peaks and then it falls and then it flatlines again. I think it peaked and then it fell off a cliff, and now it's starting to coast itself back up in a good trajectory. So yeah, definitely a huge shout out to friend of show Cade York. And I think one of the bright spots of the season was him making that 58-yard field goal, because things would have been a lot uglier a lot sooner had they lost that game and let Baker Mayfield complete game-winning drive on them, and if he missed that kick.
Nick, they did close Top Thrill Dragster.
They did. I know.
They did,
yeah.
Just with your analogy there, just wanted to put that finer point on it.
Well, maybe one day they'll close this Top Thrill Dragster, but
hopefully Cade York's going to be around for quite some time and outlive all the rides at Cedar Point.
We need him a Millennium Force, where it's a real feel-good thing. There's ups and there's downs, but it's overall amazing.
Remember when LeBron came back to Cleveland and he got to name a roller coaster or something that was Cedar Point was begging him, if you come back, we'll let you name a roller coaster. Some mac and cheese company was if you come back, we'll let you have all this mac and cheese. Cedar Point should make a promise to Cade York, hey, if you're the Browns kicker for a decade and you're pretty good along the way, they could set a percentage, you could have your own roller coaster, and that's 10 years worth of work. I don't even know if Cade's a roller coaster guy, but the payoff could be monumental. I mean, you could
incentivize him.
Yeah, you could have York Mountain at Cedar Point, in 10 summers from now.
He could rename the Dawson Drop that we've already got out there.
All right, good stuff. Let's talk some Cavs, because just last night, the Cavs had another win over the Phoenix Suns, one of the top teams in the NBA. The Cavs now, kind of sad, guys, exactly halfway through their season. What are your biggest takeaways so far from the Cavs as they sit here right now? They're 26-15, currently the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. And I could just say personally, maybe a little bit of a homer, I think the Cavs have exceeded my expectations. I thought it was going to take some time for Donovan Mitchell to gel with the couple of all-stars that already existed in Cleveland with DG and Jared Allen. I think the Cavs right here at 26-15 have exceeded what I thought they would.
Donovan Mitchell is everything that he was billed and more. And that was my takeaway so far, because I was wondering how he would fit in. I was wondering what his game would look like. And boy, from just the first game that he was here, it's just been fantastic. That 71-point game, he's already got a huge, career defining moment in Cleveland in the first half of this season. He has been everything that I had hoped for, and he's fit in with this team so well. It seems like they're the anti-Browns.
Yeah.
They get together so well. They just communicate. They've got the true sense of team. They do the junkyard dog thing, but they genuinely seem to really like each other, which is so rare, it seems, in locker rooms. And this team, everybody has a role. They know their role. They understand it. And you see it night in, night out. And the way Donovan has really pulled everything together has just been fantastic. They've been fun to watch. My one thing that I want to see them work on in the second half is get better on the road. Their splits are not good. They're very, very good at the home, and they're very, very poor on the road. So we need to work on that if we're going to have a chance in the playoffs, because we're going to have to pull out a couple of games on the road. But, I think they could do it. Like I said, I really like this Cavs team. I like what I'm seeing. Let's just clean it up on the road, boys.
I was just reading a Cavs presser, I think, this afternoon. He was just named the NBA Eastern Conference Player of the Week again. Very well deserved.
I just saw that. Yep.
Yeah.
No brainer.
And I think by contrast, it's really nice that just the Cavs in general, they've saved us. I know we've made Twitter memes about it. Well, Chris has, about the fact that they have really picked up where the Browns have left us off. So, they've got half their season under their belt, and there's improvements to make. But in general, shout out to the Cavs for keeping us afloat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you turn it on, you never have to worry about, this isn't a team that's just going to collapse or dud. I mean, even on their worst days, it looks like everybody's trying their best and are just generally fun to watch.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely been a breath of fresh air. Dave, any thoughts on the Cavs halfway through?
Yeah, man, the only thing that I would add to that, Nick, is that you were disappointed it's halfway through. This season is so long. I am ready for the playoffs. I'm cool with it being over halfway.
All right.
Sure.
I'm ready for the warmer weather. I'm ready for the watch parties. Screw the first round. I'm ready to see this Cavs team take a deeper dive into the playoffs. And we talk about them being the anti-Browns. It's funny, coming through some of this media scene and stuff. Somebody that covered pro sports in Cleveland for a really long time once told me that when you put a bunch of millionaire kids, a bunch of millionaire 20-year-olds in a room together, you never really know what's going to happen. It could be a bunch of different variations, and one of them could be that they all become best friends. And I think that's what we've seen with these Cavs, is they all genuinely do really get along off the court, and I feel like that synergy that they've built in the locker room carries itself onto the floor on a nightly basis. And it's been just a treat to watch on a nightly basis. Even when they struggle, they're never really out of it, because they're always just the avalanche away, and that's what definitely makes that team so much fun. Alrighty, who's ready to get in some bets?
Let's go.
Alrighty, well, you could bet with the whole show crew all off season long. The Browns might be done, but the Cavs are here to stay. Guardians baseball is right around the corner. NFL playoffs are here, and you can bet anywhere. But at Tipico, you're going to get the best odds on your favorite Cleveland sports teams and players with our big play boosts. You hear us talking about them week in, week out. We're going to be doing a bunch more of these through the rest of basketball season into baseball season. Who knows, maybe even some NFL playoffs. So download the Tipico Sportsbook. Keep a look out on all of our social media pages for those special big play boosts. Of course, you must be 21 years or older to gamble. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's look at some bets, guys. The Cavs currently have the 10th best odds to win the NBA title this season. They're currently plus 2,000. I think that seems about right. Would you bet it if it was boosted by Tipico?
We're not going to start with a futures bet on the Browns to win the Super Bowl? No?
I don't think those come out until after.
I don't think anyone wants to do that.
I don't think those come out till after the Super Bowl, Dave. So I think February 13th show. It is. It'll be February 13th show. We'll talk Super Bowl futures on Tipico Sportsbook.
There we
It's
go.
a promise. So what do you guys think, though? Plus 2,000 for the Cavs to win the title? I feel like that's about right.
The only problem I have with the placement of the Cavs here is where they really have them in the East, because you got, I think they're definitely behind the Celtics and Bucks.
Okay.
But then you've got the Nets there and the 76ers. And, I like my chances against either of those teams. I like the Cavs as the third best team in the East right now. And we'll see if it bears out that way. Young team, like I said, but I really do like it there. So having said that, I guess I do like that bet because I think the Cavs are a little bit undervalued here.
Yeah, I definitely think it's fair in that regard. I think they're probably logic behind putting the Nets above the Cavs in how this all shakes out is that they have KD and Kyrie, two guys that are NBA champions, have been there before. But now big news out of the NBA today, Kevin Durant's going to be out several weeks with a sprained MCL. So that's huge news in the Eastern Conference that kind of makes things a little bit more realistic maybe for the Cavs to really solidify themselves as that third best position. But I'm with you. In a 7-game series with the Philadelphia 76ers right now, today, I like my chances.
Well, what the heck? I mean, we beat the Celtics. We beat the creme de la creme here. So, and we're only going to get better, and we're going to get hopefully healthier too. So, we'll see. We'll see. I like our chances right now.
Yeah, definitely a little bit early to be talking NBA championship for the Cavs, but I'm sure Tipico Sportsbook is going to drop some playoff betting odds with us as we take that journey through this spring. Let's talk
Speaking of championships, real quick here.
Yeah.
I placed my second bet, because I bet with Bernie. Unfortunately, lost on that one.
Yep.
I also bet on the game tonight, the national championship game. And I've got, and let me just see what your thoughts are.
This will be live, Chris, so be careful. Here we go. You're really putting yourself out there.
Okay, I've got Georgia. I've got the favorite.
Yep.
And I've got the over. And that's what I did. It's obviously not going to pay a whole lot because you got the favorite, then you've got the over. But it was boosted on there, and I went in there and I placed my bet. What do you think about my chances? I think that's a laydown.
So it's going on right now. We're going to find out here in a couple hours.
Georgia money line, or did you take Georgia with the points?
It's Georgia just straight up to win.
Wow.
It's Georgia plus the over is the way they had it listed in there, and that's the one I clicked on.
I mean, I'm
still a novice when it comes to this stuff because I didn't do any gambling before it was legal in Ohio.
Nor did I, and you did a much safer bet than I did, than I attempted to do.
Oh yeah, I figured that's like buying a security there. That's like buying gold in a market.
Good work.
Yeah,
I did way too many exciting things trying to mess around.
Yeah, Gab was texting us. She during that Browns game after Nick Chubb scored. She was like, "Guys, good news." So Nick Chubb scored, but now or it was Najee Harris. It was Najee Harris scored, but now I need Amari Cooper, all these other people.
I just need Chubb, Amari, the Browns to win.
And Cade York
so
to score a touchdown. No problem.
Gab,
Yeah.
welcome to it. Welcome to the Tipico app. All right. If you guys had to bet one NFL underdog in the super wild card weekend, this coming weekend, who would it be? You have Miami plus 10.5 at Buffalo. You have Baltimore as an underdog straight up to Cincinnati. And you have the Jags are underdogs at home against the Los Angeles Chargers. And that's the AFC underdogs.
Oh, those are the
And then NFC underdogs, you have the Seahawks are plus 10 against San Francisco, a lot of points. The Giants plus 3 in Minnesota. Tampa Bay, 2.5 point dog at home. Brady, a home dog in the first round of the playoffs. I think that's mine.
That's mine. Yeah, Cowboys over Brady, or
Brady over Cowboys.
Brady over Cowboys.
I think I like that straight up. I think I like the Bucs straight up this weekend over Dallas.
Yeah, I think you said, let's see, Jacksonville's 1.5 point dog.
Yeah, at home against
home.
Yeah, against the Chargers.
I guess I'm going to take that. I am not overly bowled away by Trevor Lawrence, but
Me neither.
he had that big wide open throw. Did you see that in the end zone? It's like, what are you doing, man? We've seen that out of really bad quarterbacks in Cleveland for years. You shouldn't see it out of a quarterback like him.
I think it's like the 4 people in this room could have made that throw.
That was pretty bad, but I'm still going to take them because they're at home. And I'd also like to see more egg on the face of one Urban Meyer. And the farther that the Jags go this year, the more and more you get on Urban's face on that one.
Dave, you got a dog this weekend?
Oh man! All right, so
I
one.
already reversed the. So Tampa Bay was
Something
plus
tells
2.5.
me Dave's cooked a parlay.
No, you know
Okay.
what we could introduce as everyone learns how to gamble a little bit more is what they call a teaser bet.
All right.
Okay.
And
All
so,
right.
Gab, what this is, you can add points to these lines and then parlay it together. So let's say what I like to do with some of these is, always root for the underdog. Miami plus 10.5, take that.
Okay.
Seattle plus 10. You can buy like 6 or 7 points for each one of those and put them together. So Miami, let's just say plus 17.5. So they have to lose by less than 17.5 for you to win.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Seattle, as long as they keep it within 17, you win that. So as long as those two hit, that would be called a teaser parlay.
Wow. Okay, so that's a teaser.
Yep. Typically not a great idea, but I love doing them.
And
They
how
are a lot of fun.
How far in advance? Because here's another thing I'm learning. There's cutoffs for certain things.
Once
So
the game starts, typically.
that's the same. All right. I was learning a lesson about cashing out this past game also. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually
I
once you
wasn't sure
lock
if
in.
teaser meant you got to have it in. Maybe because it's a teaser 24 hours in advance.
We
but-
are starting a gambling 101 class for
Yeah.
sure.
For sure. You guys know I don't live bet. I have not live bet once.
I tried and then
It's
I
kinda
just didn't
fun.
do it.
I just get my bets in, and then once the game's on,
Yeah.
the game's on. I'm focusing on the game.
I
Do you
didn't-
know what's fun to do though for live betting with college foot or college hoops
Okay.
is let's just say all the games start all at once,
Uh-huh.
and then you have that you just pick the teams that are favored, and if they're up like 8 points, you just do deep money lines on those and parlay them all together. And like the payout is still pretty good. Like you put $5 on it, it'll still pay like 100.
Oh, really?
So
See,
I've done that. I hit that one a couple
I'm
of
gonna
times.
have to check that out.
It's super fun.
That's something to do. All
See,
right.
everything
Well,
that you just said, I'm gonna need to
that's a deep
slow
cut.
that.
Yeah, write that down.
And figure that out because that's all I wanted to do was just get just help me get my $10 back. Honestly, at this point.
All right, so you guys know that we love betting overs on the show. I mean, I think that's kind of become like a staple of the show, even before sports betting was legal in Ohio. I mean, we were talking about overs for the Browns player props, but what's one first round playoff game that you're taking the over on, no matter what that it's at? So we can't look at any numbers in this segment in the show notes, unless you guys know already.
Bills.
The Bills Dolphins, you're going to take the over
Yeah.
no matter what? Okay.
It's at Buffalo, though.
Yeah.
It's going to be cold, right?
I mean, that doesn't stop Josh. It
No, I
hasn't
just
stopped
bel-
Josh Allen.
I just
before.
believe in miracles now with the Bills, and I just feel like they're
Okay.
gonna light it
All
up.
right. All right.
What-
I
what
think
do
I'm
you
going to
think,
go to that
Chris?
Jacksonville game.
Okay.
I'll go over on that
I
one,
could
too.
see that.
I'll keep
Yeah.
my money all in the same game there because I could really see that being a slinger. Then
Nick-
with LA, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, Chris. I tend to agree with you there. Nick, what are you thinking?
I'm copying Chris. I'm going all my money. I said I got Tampa straight up. I'm going Tampa and Dallas over. Both offenses capable of putting up a lot of points.
Playoff Tommy?
Obviously, in Dallas, you have Dak with Zeke, CeeDee Lamb, and some of the big plays that they're capable of. But in Tampa, playoff Tom, playoff Lenny, Mike Evans looks really good as of recent.
Yep.
I don't know. Tampa heating up at the right time. I like Tampa in the over there.
Plus, there's something about Tom Brady now that he's got that little chip on his shoulder. People are doubting him again, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know these guys, the all-time, the GOAT types. Every time you put them in that situation, they tend to respond. So I like that one too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're good. I think that's our big play bets of the week. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode of the Big Play Reflog Show. As always, huge thanks to all of our sponsors. Go download that Tipico Sportsbook. Use the link in all of our social media handles at Big Play Reflog, Big Play 216. Go download that Tipico app and bet with the show all week, all off season, and all playoffs long, because we're going to have some super fun big play boosts there. Also, big thanks to Shaq News. Big thanks to Labatt. And we will see you guys next week for another episode of the Big Play Reflog Show. Go Browns, hopefully. Peace.
It's time! Streaming live from Cleveland, Ohio! Presenting the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight podcast of the world, the big play. We fly